Hey everyone, welcome back to TK's Tech Talk. Today I'm going to be testing this LGA 1700 contact frame, or 12th gen and 13th gen contact frame. This is by Thermalright, and I will be testing it with a Liquid Freezer 2 420 ARGB as well as the currently installed 12900k CPU, and I would then upgrade to the 13900k CPU. So first what I'm going to do is do a test of this contact frame. That's it out of the box there. It also comes with some thermal paste and the driver to remove the screws, and we have to use the same screws. So I'll be doing some testing with this, with the stock ILM, and we see what sort of temperatures we get. So we're going to be using a default power limit, so that is no power limits applied. And we're also going to have only XMP enabled in the BIOS. There is no other tuning going on here. We're going to use absolutely default settings just so it's easy for someone to recreate or test what their configuration is like if you're using the MSI Z690 Edge Wi-Fi D4. Of course the case and fans will vary, and just so that you know, I'm using this 420 AIO with push-pull with 6 fans at the front drawing air inside the case, and then we have 3 exhaust fans. They are, if I remember correctly, the Corsair 140mm ARGB fans. So let's get onto the PC. Let's do the first run of Cinebench R23 with all power limits removed, and let's see how we do. So this time we're going to go over the results first. The last time I did a video like this, it ended up being an hour long, and it was very hard to follow what was going on. And I apologize in advance if the audio is a little bit low. So let's start with the results for the 12900K, and the bars in yellow represent the Cinebench score, in orange the temperature in Celsius, and the green bars represent the power in watts. So we have 4 sets of results here. The first result is without the power limits applied in the BIOS and without the contact frame. So this is stock ILM, and we have a Cinebench score of 27,132 at a temperature of a few cores running at 100 degrees and a power draw of 289 watts. Once we applied the contact frame, again without power limits in the BIOS, we attained a score of 27,410, and there's a massive decrease in temperature. Now I know that this is still high, but 11 degrees less than 100 is still a massive drop, and so that contact frame is definitely helping, and it even helped the power draw. We only managed to pull 274 watts throughout the entire 10-minute run. Moving on to the power limits. So we applied a power limit of 241 watts and an undervolt of minus 0.05 volts. And in this case, without the contact frame, we still get a pretty decent result. You can see we're still hitting the 27,200s in the Cinebench score with only 92 degrees on the 2 hottest cores, I think it was. And that's still 8 degrees lower than without the power limits. And of course the power draw is restricted, so we're only getting 242 watts. But this is a good way to use the CPU if you have a standard cooler and you don't have the contact frame. Now once we apply the contact frame to this situation with the 241 watts in the BIOS and undervolts of minus 0.05 volts with the contact frame, we have the best score, well, one of the best scores, 27,375, and the lowest temperature so far of 85 degrees, and again a power limit of 241. So that contact frame is definitely doing a good job and is definitely worth it for the 12th gen CPU. Moving on to the 13900K, for the first test without power limits and stock ILM, we attained a score of 40,438 at 100 degrees on a couple of cores and a power draw of 338. That's some insane power draw. So this score didn't change much throughout the run. I'm guessing because the processor is designed to run at 100 degrees and it stayed there, so it stayed at around 40,400 throughout the run. Once we applied the contact frame, there wasn't really much of a change. The Cinebench score was a little bit lower. That might be due to a background task or something, but it's within margin of error, and we only gained 2 degrees and saved 4 watts on the power draw. So there's not really much change. I'm guessing out of the box the 13th gen CPU with the stock ILM has a better contact, and maybe they've done something to the IHS or maybe fixed it a little bit to allow for this small difference. So once we applied a 0.05 volts of undervolt and no power limits in the BIOS, The results were still more or less the same for the Cinebench score, 40,492, but we saved 5 degrees on the temperatures and only 300, well, I say only 300, but it's more than 30 watts saving on the power. So this is definitely a good way to run the CPU. You're not losing any performance anyway. And once we applied the contact frame in this situation, so again, no power limits in the BIOS, and we applied minus 0.05 volts of undervolt with the contact frame, we had the best score yet, 40,523 and 90 degrees temperature. So we saved another 5 degrees, nowhere as big as the power drop with the 12th gen CPU, but still with some sort of a drop, and we also saved some watts on the power there at 294 watts. Now I just want to point out that again I am using a massive cooler. I'm using an Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 420mm AIO, so if you're using a different cooler your results will definitely vary. Either way, the main point here is that the contact frame is definitely helping with the temperatures with both the 12900k and the 13900k, although the 12900k or maybe other 12th gen CPUs definitely seem to benefit more from the contact frame. So at this point, if you're still interested in watching the videos about all of the testing that I've done, and I've also got some videos showing the difference in thermal paste spread with and without the contact frame, please feel free to continue watching. Okay, so I'm back on the PC now, and here you can see the cores are averaging between 24 and 27 up to a maximum of 28 or 29 degrees whilst in idle. So let's start the first Cinebench run, and what you will see, so this is with all power limits removed, well, which is basically default BIOS for this motherboard, and I'm going to start the test, and you will see, just in case you're interested, the room temperature is around 24 degrees at the moment, and what you will see is that this will very quickly jump up to hitting that 100 degree mark. So let's just wait for that for a second so that we should be able to see this hit the 100 degrees, maybe within the first run, and maybe not. I'm not sure, I can't remember when it happens, but it does definitely happen quite soon. So we haven't hit the 100 degrees yet, but anyway, let's just have a look at the current score. We've got 27,288 right there. Okay, it's a bit lower than my previous testing, but anyway, that's fine. The main thing here is to see how these temperatures are, and there we go, we're on the 100 degrees. Now what I'm going to do, so that we get a full set of results, I'm going to let this run. I'm not going to bore you with the video, but I'm going to let it run, and then we're going to do this test again by applying a power limit. So back when this finishes. So as we approach the end of this first run, another thing I wanted to point out here was you will see some of these CPU cores. I'm not sure if it's very readable on the screen right now, but they will go down below like 4.9 to 4.8 gigahertz. There you go, you can see that. So the hotter cores are doing that, and we are just about to finish the last run, and we only had 2 cores, which is 5 and 7. These are my annoying cores, I like to call them. These always hit the high temperatures first. So we have 2 cores that hit 100 degrees, one that hit 98, and the rest of them are okay-ish, you know, with this new standard that we have for temperatures. And then we have the Cinebench score, I lost my mouse, which is recording around 27,100, is it? 27,132. It's not bad. Okay, that's only, and this is only lower than the 27,500 you might see because some interesting glitch there, because of this temperature issue, right? So because the cores are boosting up and there's no power limit. The power limit we hit was around 288 watts. There it is, you can see there, 288 watts. So now let me apply a 241 watt limit, and I'm also going to an undervolt of 0.05 volts. You may have seen this on one of my other videos, but this does help us attain a more or less similar score with much less power draw, right? So let's do that. Okay, we're back in. So I've applied a 241 watt power limit and a minus 0.05 volt undervolt. So this will give us more or less a very similar score to before, whilst reducing some of the heat and the power input. So we're going to see that here. So we're going to keep an eye on the temperatures, and you can see some of the core clocks at the bottom there, and also you will see the power draw here not go over 241. So we finished at 27,132 in the last run. So I'm just going to go ahead and click start, and we're just going to look at the first run just to see what happens here. So let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, what you notice immediately is that before we got to like 96 or 97 straight away. One more thing, I have probably shouldn't have done this, but I think it's still fair because we're using slower fan speeds. But I've restricted all of the fans to 50% because this is the way I actually use my PC, just to see if that's going to actually affect the temperatures at all, right? And the first run has just finished. So what have we finished on? And we've got 27349. So we're still getting a very, very similar score. So I don't see the point in running this at 280 watts. See, we maxed out at 242 watts. We don't have a single CPU core. Okay, we've got two that have touched, one that has touched 89, that was the package, touched 89, but not one of them has hit 90 yet, and we're coming to the end of 2 runs. The scores just dropped down to 27320, which is fine. So let this finish and we'll see how much difference it is. Right, so that run is coming to an end and we've only touched 92 degrees on the hottest core. Everything else is below 90. And we finished on a score of 27289. I'm not sure why it's higher than the low power limit run, but maybe, like I said, because of the maybe because of throttling, I'm not sure. But I'm sure I've had higher scores than that in the past. The bottom line is, we finished at 27289 with a 241 watt power limit and a minus 0.05 volt of undervolts. So what we're going to do now is going to install that Thermalright contact frame, and let's see how these results differ. Okay, so I just wanted to show you something about why this heating issue happens. There's quite a bit of CPU paste on here, but the main thing here is if you look down the center here, and you can see all of the paste, at least in my application here, is that a lot of it's on the right hand side, but in the middle you can see there's not much paste, and that's because the CPU is bending. As you can see, a similar thing. If we have a look at the head there, you can see in the middle there's less paste than on the outside. The amount of paste is not important, it's about how the paste is spreading. So let me clean this up and then I'll take off the ILM. Okay, so I haven't finished cleaning and removing the CPU yet, but I just realized that it makes a lot more sense to install the 13900k before playing about with the contact frame, because at least that way I won't have to put this one back in twice. So let me just remove that CPU and install the new one. So I've got the 13900k there out of the packaging. Not sure if you can read it on there. It definitely says 13900k, just take my word for it. And oops, the camera's a bit wobbly. I'm actually resting it against my bed as I do this. Wouldn't recommend that, but let's just get rid of this CPU for now. I'll clean it up later on. So that one's out. Definitely a little messy there. And get that new one in. Oh, I was about to put it in the wrong way around. I wasn't paying attention to the arrow. So the arrow is, where is the arrow? Oh, it's a very tiny arrow on this one, just about here. So I was putting in right. And we can always use the notches as a reference point. Oopsie daisy. We can always use the notches as a reference point instead. Right, that's in. Let's clamp it down. And it's in. Okay, so as before, we'll be applying a small amount of MX4. It's the paste I was using before. So let's just put a little bit of this down. Should be more than enough, I hope. And it still feels like this CPU seems to be curved upwards rather than in like the old one. But that we'd only find out once we try. So let me get this AIO cold plate back on. Stuck somewhere. Wires are all over the place in here. So we're just going to put this down and let me screw this back in, and we'll do our first boot of the 13900k. Right, so the first boot brought me into the BIOS. I've made some changes, made sure that we have removed all power limits. So it shows now 253 instead of 241 for a box cooler. And we're going to unrestrict that to water cooler, which with maximum power limits or unlimited power. Changing the memory profile to XMP profile 1, which will give us 3200 megahertz. And you can see here on the top right hand corner, indeed we have i9 13900k. So let me apply that and reboot. Right, so let's get ready for our first run on this 13900k. So we're running at about 34 degrees on the core at the moment. So we've got about 30 degrees idle temperature. Power draw and so. Okay, we're going to see for the first time how it works. And let's just make sure in Task Manager, there we go, we can see all of our 32 threads or 24 cores. And let's run the test. See how quickly we hit that 100 degrees this time. Already at 94. 96. 329 watts of power. Wow. That's a lot. And the score is 40,407. So let's leave this running to see how quickly we hit that 100 degrees, and I'll get back to you. Right, so we just entered the last run. Okay, so we did hit that 100 degrees, I think in the second or third run if I remember correctly, but bottom line is we're still hitting the 100. We've got 99, 90, 90, 95. But there's something interesting about this. 337 watts and a current score of 40,438. The score hasn't really changed. I was going to show you the cores, but they did drop towards the end after the halfway mark. They were dropping by 100 megahertz. Quite a few of them were dropping by 100 megahertz further on in the run. But this means that with this 13900K, what I noticed different in the 12900K was I believe the thermal throttling limit is higher in this processor because we're able to maintain that 40,400 score throughout the 10-minute run. So what I'm going to do now is, because of this result, I'm going to do things a bit differently. If you look at my videos, I'm used to doing a 241 watts with a 0.05 volt undervolt, minus 0.05 volts of undervolting on my 12900K. I'm going to just apply a minus 0.05 volts and let's see what that does. Okay, so as you can see here, if you just look at this voltage is IA offset. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll try and zoom in a little bit. It says minus 0.051, right? So that's what I've applied in the BIOS. The power limits are unchanged, so it'll be interesting to see how much power the CPU now draws. We've got the temperatures here, and let's begin this run just to see how things go. It's going to take me time to play with this new CPU. Looks like it's going to be a bit different from the 12th gen, but let's just see what happens. So where are we now? Well, this is interesting. The temperature and the power draw, I'd say that's and still 40,400. So why are we running this CPU at 330 watts? It doesn't make any sense. We've only just touched 91 degrees on one of the cores. Okay, max package power of 92. It's funny how 5 and 7 are still, well, 6 and 8 are still my hottest cores. Is there something wrong with my mounting on the cooler? Anyway, whatever it is, we're only on 92. I'm going to let this run. Let's see how this fares. So immediately we can see that this time the performance core is remaining at 5.4. The score is still, well, it's higher, it's 40,488, and the maximum temperature on any core is 95 degrees with a max power draw of 300 watts. I think we should just run this, if possible, at Intel spec and see what happens. But the bottom line is, we don't need to run this at unlimited power. We don't need to run it at 330 watts. We finished at 40,492 and much better temperatures. I really don't see the point in running this. But I think I should make another video regarding this because I can do tests at the other power limits, but I think there's no point in testing that right now. I think we have enough data now from the one run with no power limits, the one with 0.05 volts of undervolt, 300 watts, to be able to check if that contact frame is going to make a difference. So let's install the contact frame and see how that goes. Okay, so I've got the 12th gen CPU back in there because that's the one I'll be doing first. And what we need to do now is use this driver to uninstall the ILM. Need to get rid of this tracking, so let's get rid of that. So we're just going to slowly remove these screws, and they're not really tied in a lot, so just literally very loosely in actually at the moment, to be honest. So I think what we'll do is remove one side first. So let me remove all of the top side first. And it's best to keep the CPU in, as you might have seen from other videos. Okay, that's out. The bottom side out. Okay, so now let's install the contact frame and see how that looks. It's positioned nicely there. Looks like it's not going to move. There's a little bit of play, but I guess that's expected because the CPU is going to be resisting with those pins. So let's put all of these screws in first. Forgot to mention there's an arrow there which points in the same direction as the CPU arrow does when you're installing it. There's one on the CPU as well. So now what we need to do is slowly, about a quarter to half a turn at a time. People are doing it randomly on YouTube, and I'm going to do the same, but we're going to try and install this without making a mess. Right, so let's start at the top right. Let's just go about a quarter, about a quarter, about a quarter, about a quarter, and we keep going 1, 2, oh, we should be doing opposite direction, right? 3, we're still loose, so let's apply the opposite direction. That's what we're going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Now we just touched that resistance point, so let's do the same on this side, and do the same on this side, and do the same on, oh, 1 second, did we actually get that one? Yeah, and this one. Okay, now they're all at the first least amount of pressure. I think it might be a bit blurry, sorry about that. This graphics card's in the way. I should have probably removed that or focused it. So now we're going to tighten just a little bit from here. So we're going to do tiny bit of force there, tiny bit of force there. They all feel about the same at the moment. Okay, and let's do one more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks alright so far. I think we need a touch more. I think that's about right, maybe a tiny bit tight. Let me just see how they loosen. Yeah, so we've got about the same amount of force as we had initially to open the screw. So I'm not going to go any tighter than that. I think that's about right. Okay, so let's keep it like that. And let's get our thermal paste again. So we're going to use the same paste again with about the same amount of paste. Bit of a mess, but that's fine. Doesn't matter that much. Okay, so let's now get that cold plate on, and when we remove obviously this mess, we'll be able to see what's happened to this mess when we remove it, when we remove the cold plate after our tests. So let's see how this now sits on top of that. Right, I'm not going to bore you with this part. Let me screw this all in, and then we'll turn it on and obviously do the important part, which is the testing, right? So back in a bit. Okay, I guess my contact frame installation must have gone right, because we seem to be booted up, which is a good sign. And let's see how the temperatures are looking so far. Where are we? Right, there we go. So, okay, 20 degrees, like, is this real? I don't know if this is better or if it's just because it's cold. It's been out of the computer for a while, but it just seems unusually low at 21 and 20 degrees. But anyway, let's begin the test. So there's no power limits applied here, and that will be the best measure against what we already have to see how well it performs now, and if it's even, I don't think it's going to work at the full power limits, but sorry, without power limits, but you know, we'll see. It might. Let's make sure there was no offset voltage. Yet there's no offset voltage, and we haven't even. There's one question I keep forgetting. One thing, sorry, I keep forgetting to mention here. And it's a question that I have from many other people who are using the same CPU, at least with the 12900k, is that how long have they been using it, and is the bending permanent? I think I've answered my own question. At the end of this first run, we've got a score of 27472, and we are not even close to 90 degrees yet. Well, we've got one core at 85. Now this is very impressive, because this means we've got 269 watt power draw, and we're 4.9 gigahertz on all the cores, even the E cores, but we don't really look at them, but they're at 73. I really want to know how this does. I think with this contact frame, we don't even need to worry about we don't need to test anything else. This is done. I think we're done. We can safely say that the contact frame is doing an excellent job here. 85 degrees, 86 degrees. And these are the two cores that should hit 100 degrees. Okay, we're only 2 minutes in. Let it finish and let's see how it looks. Right, so we're in the last run now. I think the fan curve might be back to maximum again because I can hear the noise, but irrespective, we're using without the contact frame at the maximum fan speed. Anyway, if you look here, the maximum package temperature is 89 degrees. And I don't see that recorded on any core, but I'm assuming it will be for this hottest core, 87. This core and this core hit 100 degrees within the second or third pass, if I remember correctly, the first time we did this test. And we managed to maintain 27,400 throughout the run. The cores didn't slow down from 4.9 gigahertz. In my case, for these two cores, and we have one at 77, this is a more than 10 degrees improvement using this contact frame, this particular contact frame from Thermalright. These idle temps are just, they're a few degrees cooler. It just feels weird to see 20 degrees and 21 and 19 is very low. So that contact frame is doing an amazing job. I know I'm using a 420mm AIO, and it might vary depending on the IO, but I think the fact that we have such a massive difference just by making the contact better. So we're going to see what the contact looks like when we remove it, but we only managed to hit 273 watts. I think it's a bit lower as well, maybe because it doesn't need to push as hard to get that same score. So 27,400 sustained and less than 90 degrees after 10 minutes. Let's carry on. Okay, so this final test involves running the CPU at 241 watts with a minus 0.05 volt of undervolting, and that is what I was using the CPU with until now anyway. So let's see how that handles. Okay, so where's our temps? Right, where's our temps? We're at, wow, it's quite low. We're only putting 238 watts as we expect, 4.9 gigahertz all cores. And what was the first run? The first run is 27,395. Let's see how this one goes. Okay, so let's have a look at the thermal paste distribution now with the contact frame. So I've removed the screws already from the cold plate. I'm just going to take this off and let's see how that looks. I think, in my opinion, that is definitely a much better contact, and that probably tells us why we're getting those much cooler temperatures. So let me get this all cleaned up and we can then take a look at the 13900K. Okay, so we're back in Windows with the 13900K and the contact frame installed. I did try and run the test and realized I wasn't recording, so we're just going to go over this again. So we've got idle temps of around 30 degrees, similar to what we had before. It seems to run warmer than the 12900K when idle, that was at like 20 degrees. And I did a test with 288 watts and we got a score of 38,000, so we're going to ignore doing 288 watts. But anyway, let's start this test now and let's see how these temperatures get on with the contact frame installed. So before, I think we hit 2 cores at 100 degrees within like three or four passes. So let's just see how this one starts off. Already got 1 core hitting that 92 degrees. It is around 24 degrees in the room again. And the first score, it starts off on 40,572. So respectable score. Let's see how this does. Okay, so we're just going through the last run. The temperatures, we hit maximum of 98 degrees, a power of 334 watts was the maximum. And the score, oh, let's do one more run. The score we've got so far is 39,965. Not sure why that dipped towards the end there, but it looks like it's still 40,000, it's fine. But the temperatures again, 98 and 98. So it didn't actually hit that 100 degrees. And we finished on 39,980, just 20 points shy of 40,000. It's a little bit lower than before, but let me apply that 0.05 volts of undervolt and let's see how that fares against this result. Back in a moment. Okay, so we now have the 13900K with the Thermalright contact frame as well as an undervolt of minus 0.05 volts, and we're going to test this and see what sort of results we get. So we've got idle temps again of around 30 degrees. We're going to click start, watch the first run, see how the wattage ramps up and how the cores do. So you can just see there minus 0.05. And we stuck at 5.487, I guess that's supposed to be 5.4 or 5.5. After the first run, we haven't even touched 85 degrees. And we have 288 watts of power draw. And the score is 40,616. That's the highest score I've had yet with this CPU. And after the second run, are we still there? 40,561. Looks like it might gradually fall down, but anyway, let's just see how we do. Okay, so the test has finished, and as you can see, I think compared to before we dropped a few degrees, it's nowhere near as drastic as a drop from between 12900K and the with and without the Thermalright contact frame. But the good thing about using the undervolting, as you can see, we've maintained that 40,523 score with a 294 watt power draw, and we only barely touched 90 degrees. This was 88 most of the way, right until the last couple of runs, I think. So this is a pretty good result. I'm happy with this. I'm more than happy to run the CPU like this, and I will do that. But the thing is that I did have to run this test again. The CPU did crash, and I had to reseat the AIO, and I noticed that the mounts had become loose. So I put them back on, reseated the CPU, put the contact frame back on, and I ran the test again. This time it was stable. I will have to do more testing. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this content and it was useful. We found that the contact frame is definitely a massive benefit for the 12900K, and obviously a few degrees cooler for the 13900K, and hopefully it will help us to overclock this CPU. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.